Election security and election integrity is top of mind for a lot of folks as we get closer to November 5th. Today we heard from federal officials who say, yes, there are a lot of threats to our election security out there, both domestically and from bad guys in other countries. But they argue our election infrastructure has never been more secure. And that is our big story tonight. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, the federal government's newest agency, is housed in the Department of Homeland Security. They work on protecting the government's cyber infrastructure. They also work to protect the power grid, communication systems, and election systems. CISA was created in 2018 after Russia interference in the 2016 election. They say there were two main threats to our elections now: cyber attacks from other countries and in-person attacks here in the U.S.
You have cyber threats like ransomware and distributed denial of service attacks on websites. We have very real threats from our foreign adversaries, Russia, Iran, and China, who remain intent on using influence operations and disinformation for two key goals. They want to undermine American confidence in our election processes and in our democracy even broader. And then secondly, to sow partisan discord, to pit Americans against each other. And these operations are likely to continue after November 5th. Also very concerning, there are physical threats to election officials: swatting, harassment, bullying, threats of violence to election officials and their families, largely stemming from unfounded claims that the 2020 election did not represent the will of the American people.
Now, we contacted the Oregon Secretary of State's office today. They say our state has seen a high volume of threats this year: calls, social media posts, and emails harassing and threatening violence against election workers. But they say this year those threats have not escalated into actual in-person violence, thank heavens, the way that some did in 2020. They're working with CISA on safety training for election workers across Oregon, as well as local and federal law enforcement. 2 years ago, Oregon passed the Election Worker Safety Bill, which creates penalties for those threatening or harassing election workers. Issues with cybersecurity that could affect the election are happening across the country. Just today, in fact, several national news outlets reported that Chinese hackers targeted data from phones used by former President Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance. They say it's part of what appears to be wide-ranging efforts to collect intelligence on the candidates. The FBI and CISA issued a joint statement saying they are investigating. But the director of CISA says that although attacks like these will continue, U.S. elections officials have systems in place to protect your vote, like ballot counting machines that are not connected to the internet.
Election officials have put in place multiple layers of safeguards, physical access controls, cybersecurity protections to prevent election infrastructure from being compromised. And these include pre-election testing of equipment for accuracy and post-election audits. Finally, it's important to remember that every state runs things a little bit differently: different equipment, different processes. And this decentralized and diverse nature of our election infrastructure actually creates enormous strength and resilience, because it means it's not possible for a malicious actor to hack into our voting infrastructure in a way where you could have a material impact on the outcome of the presidential election, certainly not without being detected.
Well, that's interesting and reassuring. Easterly says they've done hundreds of cybersecurity assessments and election safety trainings across the country. They've posted many of those resources online, by the way, at CISA.gov if you want a deeper dive for yourself. And she says workers at your local elections office are prepared for all kinds of problems, everything from power outages to bomb threats.